Next, the route lay through the Rockies as the royal train headed for British Columbia. By now, the tour had blazed to an amazing enthusiasm. All the way, at every station and whistle stop, the crowds gathered, hoping for just a glimpse. At Vancouver, they had crossed the mainland from Atlantic to Pacific. And in British Columbia, where British colonels go to die, they revived themselves to cheer. Thunderbird Park, Victoria, over on Vancouver Island, was packed solid. She came 80 miles to see the princess. Probably the youngsters got the biggest kick out of the royal tour. All dolled up in the best bib and tucker. A trip on the destroyer Crusader made a busman's holiday for the Duke of Edinburgh. It was only to be a short trip, and the weather was none too kind. But there's only one place for a sailor, and that's on a ship underway. He looks really at home, doesn't he? Throughout the tour, people remarked on the unobtrusive but firm support the Duke gave to the princess. They made a charming pair, and people began to think of them as just a happy couple on holiday. After a short rest, the journey back east began as they headed north on their way to Edmonton. It was at Yates that the royal couple climbed into the engine driver's cab. Then, with the Duke acting as her fireman, Princess Elizabeth took over the controls and drove the 315-ton loco for 14 miles. Do you see what I see, my dear? Edmonton was the northernmost point of the tour. Now they really met the people, with the Duke going over big with the boys. All Alberta seemed to come for a look-see. Then they ran into a little bit of old Scotland. An off-the-route flight took them to Saskatoon in the heart of the wheat belt. A big moment for a little girl to remember all her life. And then it was on again for the princess. At North Bay, they met 5 girls who've been big news all their lives. From their hometown came the Dion quintuplets. They're big girls now. And then back to Montreal for the biggest reception of the tour. Thousands of kiddies filled 2 big stadiums. A visit to the Queen Mary Veterans Hospital was laid on at the princess's special request. At night, thousands blocked the streets in front of the Hotel Windsor. By now, the royal tour had become a sensational success. The visit of 2 royal personages became the triumph of 2 people who'd won the hearts of all they'd met. A visit to a hockey game meant a chance to watch instead of being watched. Hockey in Canada is always exciting and usually played superbly. After all, it is our national sport. Now came the visit to President Truman in Washington, and as this turned out to be very much a social occasion, Barbara, I think I'll ask you to take over.
Well, as you can see, Washington laid on an impressive reception. They do that kind of thing pretty well over there, don't they, Bernie? And the Washington I remember is a grand city for a parade. American newspapermen are the toughest in the world, or so they like to say. And it takes a lot to break through their hard-boiled exteriors. But Princess Elizabeth did it when she went to meet them.
My husband and I are most grateful to President Truman for asking us to Washington and for this opportunity to meet him and his family. I'm sure we are going to enjoy every moment of our stay here. I'm glad, too, that I am to have the chance in a few minutes of meeting some of you personally. I only wish I had time to meet you all.
Instead of the shy, simply dressed girl they'd expected, here was a confident, elegant young woman. The princess wore a costume that set fashion writers scribbling. And did you notice, Bernie? The princess wore 2 Canadian maple leaves pinned to her lapel. As Princess of Canada, Princess Elizabeth entertained the President, Mrs. Truman, and their daughter Margaret at the Canadian Embassy. Never before has the princess looked so beautiful and truly regal. Canadians all over the world were proud of their princess.
You bet they were, Barbara. In 2 days, the royal couple conquered America and made her more closely our friend. But now the tour's end was in sight as the royal train traversed the maritime provinces in its journey to the Atlantic Ocean. For nearly every mile of the route, it was hail and farewell. Through villages and hamlets, the train passed on a triumphal tour. Never has a land so taken 2 young people to its heart. Those Canadians who left their farms and their workshops to see a royal princess will never forget her or her courteous and kindly husband. We know that throughout the Dominion, Princess Elizabeth and her sailor husband have strengthened the ties which link the Commonwealth together with the Crown. Now the tour is ended, and from Newfoundland, Britain's oldest colony and Canada's newest province, the country says bon voyage and come again.